Welcome to A Girl's Guide to, the podcast designed to help generations of women enhance their minds, love their bodies, and heal their souls. I'm your host, Michaela, a girl navigating life and helping you do the same. I am so happy and grateful that you are here. Let's dive in. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of A Girl's Guide to, and happy Monday. As always, I hope that you had a fabulous and safe and fun weekend. Today's conversation is going to be one that, quite honestly, I didn't expect to be having, but the universe always delivers the things that we need, as you know, I truly believe in. So today we're going to be talking about the good old marijuana, the weedies, okay? And I have here with me my friend Elisa. If you want to just say hey to the
Yes.
girlies.
Hello, my name is Elisa. I am a 22-year-old multifaceted creative entrepreneur. I dabble a little bit in event curation, content creation, styling, creative directing, and recently moved into my new apartment. So I've kind of been up to like renovating my home, and that's like a new passion that I'm like diving into. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Yes, love it. I'm so happy to have you here today. Elisa and I met through Instagram actually, and we
Yes.
found out that we were local to each other, which is super cool because usually all the girls that I meet online are not local to me. So we've had the chance to meet up in person and chat, and we're always talking and a lot in the DMs. And we recently, or you recently, I should say, shared on your Instagram story about your bad habit with smoking weed,
Yes.
and we kind of connected off of that. So, really quickly, I want you to dive into your story. But just before we do that, for those of you listening who may be surprised to hear that I smoke weed, because I always talk about being sober, but I like to say that I'm alcohol free because I don't want to put out this like front. I don't ever want to come across fake. I am alcohol free, so I'm sober in that sense. But I did start smoking again around last year. So I actually jotted down my little like my story because I was like, oh my gosh, this could be really long. But basically, I started smoking for the first time at 15 with my first boyfriend. Then my second boyfriend, when I was 18, he was big time stoner, and I started smoking heavily with him from 2019 to 2021. And then beginning of 2022, we broke up. I decided I'm going to go back to school and get sober. So that's when I got completely sober. And then I went a year and 2 months of no smoking, no drinking, but then picked up smoking again in June of 2022. At first, it was pretty much just like in moderation socially, like I wasn't spending any of my own money on it. But over the last year and a half or so, it has definitely returned back to that bad habit it once was, which is why I stopped. So I've kind of had to have some conversations with myself recently around this bad habit and what I need to do moving into this new year. And you shared something on your story about pretty much going through the exact same realization right now of
Yes.
it being
Yes.
a bad habit. So why don't you share a little bit about your story with smoking?
Yes. So honestly, I think the first time I ever smoked was in middle school, which is like so crazy to say, but
Mhm.
it the friend group that I was around, it was accessible at that time. This is when it started becoming more normal, I feel like, and more accessible. And it had less of a negative connotation around or negative conversation, I want to say.
Mhm.
Um, so 15 years old, introduced to it, wasn't really fucking with it. It
Yeah.
was weird, like I was like, I don't know, it gives me a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, think about being in middle school and the mentality you had then and being high. Like my
Crazy.
mind was going, yeah, no, my mind was going everywhere. So, and then I didn't do it again up until I met my boyfriend, my current boyfriend actually. And he's like a big stoner. And he met me at like a time in my life where I was like really struggling mentally. So he introduced it to me, and it honestly helped at the time to work through the differences and difficulties that I was having at the time mentally and also just like in real life. But then it ended up becoming a crutch. Like it got to a point where I started relying on it, and I felt like I needed it every time that I was having a depressive episode or a mental breakdown, or I was feeling burnt out. Like literally anytime that I was dealing with like negative emotions, my crutch was weed. It was, I'm gonna get high, I'm gonna forget my problems. And that's kind of the conversations that I had been having in my life. When people did use weed, it was usually to numb their pain or to numb the things that they were going through. And a part of me questioned this ideology. It questioned myself and my own like I guess my own needs when it came to weed. And so then that's when I started realizing like, okay, maybe I have an issue, but I never really addressed the issue. I never really challenged myself to stop. It was something that I was always say like, I think I'm gonna stop smoking. I think I'm gonna stop smoking. Or I'll tell my boyfriend like I'm thinking about quitting. I think I want to do like a little break. And at times I was successful and I would have like a 2 week break,
Yeah.
which is like nothing to be honest, nothing. But it I kind of, I guess it kind of like exposed me to the ability of being sober because those 2 weeks I was able to actually reflect and realize like, okay, is weed like really benefiting me or has it become a crutch? And are there any ways that it's kind of holding me back? And so I would go through my I guess you could say phases where I would go on my breaks and then get back into it again and go on my breaks and get back into it. And it was just this cycle that I was stuck in for so long. And I honestly give myself grace because at the end of the day, I am young and I have never been taught discipline in my life. All my discipline, like self discipline, I've taught myself. So when I have struggles like that, I'm like, I should give myself more grace because I show discipline in other aspects of my life. And a friend recently said this to me. They said like it's okay to have your vice and as long as it's not something that is like absolutely causing you harm. So hearing that I'm like okay, so it's not about needing to completely cut this out, but more so setting boundaries with it and being intentional about how I'm using it. So I feel like for the last 3 years to kind of like reel it back to what I was saying, the last 2 years I was really struggling with getting out of that cycle, and this year it kind of just finally clicked for me. So I was able to have a longer break, and it was my most recent break, 3 months,
Oh,
right?
wow.
November, December, January, yeah, 3 months. I
Oh,
just
awesome.
recently started smoking again, and and I'm back in that cycle of using it every single day, which kind of sucks,
Yeah.
but I'm doing it with a different intention, and I think that because I have a different intention, like I shouldn't be so hard on myself, you know?
It
And that new intention is about needing to um reset when like knowing when to turn my brain off. And that's
yeah.
usually late at night, you
Later
know?
on, right?
Because I'm sure you can relate, but like being a creative and an entrepreneur, late at night is when my mind is going. Like that's when my creative ideas are kicking in.
Yes, but when I want them to not be, because it's like,
Right.
"Hey, I
So
wanna chill out right now." But I
so it's
agree.
like yeah, so it's like learning to differentiate when it's time to work and when it's time to rest. And weed is definitely something that I can say has benefited me in my ability to relax. So that is a point in time when it would benefit me. And so I need to find that balance where I'm like, okay, now is not time to be high. It's time to work. It's time to be productive, you know? And after 8 p.m., that's a different
Yeah.
story. But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I
that's a
love it.
little bit of like what I've been going back and forth with,
Yeah.
but
No,
I
there's a
want to
lot.
hear your thoughts.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I love it, I love it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the what's the word? Just I guess the effect that your environment has on you, right? That's kind of what you said when you were back in middle school, it was accessible, like people around you were using it. I think that has been the biggest challenge for me and probably for you too, living with a stoner, right? Like unfortunately, my siblings both dabble in the weeds now, and I have myself to blame for that as the oldest sibling. But,
I hear you.
I part of me feels kinda guilty for it, but at the same time, my sister's 21, like, she buys her own shit, she does her own thing, she provides for my brother. I am, like, tapped out. I'm like, "Okay, I can't be feeling guilty anymore." But it's funny because now it's, like, backwards, like, they are the ones smoking and I'm around, so I'm like, "Oh, can I hit your pen? Oh, like, oh, you're gonna smoke? I guess I'll
Yeah.
smoke with you." Or, like, I'll go out with my friends for the weekend and they all have pens or someone's gonna roll up, and it's just, like, when it's so easy, it's just like any bad habit. Bad habits or any habits that are easy, you're just gonna continuously do them. So I think for me, that's been the biggest challenge is it's just around all the time, whether it be friends or family,
Yes.
and that is a really big challenge. So how have you been navigating that? I'm curious, like, the last 3 months of being with
Okay.
your man, like, how did
Yeah.
you set that boundary?
Okay. I don't know if like I'm the only one that like thinks this way, but when it comes to like setting goals or intentions, I become obsessed with them.
Mm. Yep.
And it becomes a thing that it's like it's non-negotiable. Like this is what we're doing now,
Mhm.
and I fully embody that goal or
Mhm.
who that person is going to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what I did was I made it very clear, and I was like, no, I'm done, and like I'm not doing it anymore. You can do it if you want to. I don't care, but don't do it around me. Don't encourage me, and if I try, hold me accountable.
Tell me no, yeah.
And yeah, but he failed miserably.
Yeah, my siblings did the same. Especially my little brother because he's my little brother, you know? So I'm like
Yeah.
the other day he was like, "You said you were gonna stop with the new year," but I had my period, right? And I had cramps, and I was
Okay.
really like, "Yeah, but it's gonna make my period feel better." And he was like, "Why don't you just take medicine?" And I was like, "Bro, why do you think weed's legal? It is medicine." And then he was like, "Valid," and he let me hit the pen, and I was like, "Damn, you are way too easy to convince."
Yes. Yes. But see, those are instances where I'm like, okay, there's a reasonable, benefit behind it. Because
Right.
I'm the same way. I One of the reasons that I use weed now, with my new intention, is when I'm dealing with period cramps
Mhm.
or my back injury flares up.
Mm.
And it helps. So I feel like give yourself grace for those,
Yes.
as long as you're setting the boundary and the intention to not do it as often, it's okay.
Yeah, I loved what you said about having a new intention because I'm also stepping into that era of, okay, I know that if I smoke during the day, I'm not gonna have the energy I want to have to be productive and to get
Hmm.
everything done, and later on, I'm going to regret it.
Yes.
Future me is not going to thank me if I smoke right now, so how can what else can I do in this moment? I think it's just right now, because I have been smoking heavily for the last few months or so, it's just about breaking that habit, but it's so hard.
Yeah.
And I don't know about
It
you,
is
but
it is
I have,
hard.
like, a fixation. I think that's really what
Yes.
it is.
No, I do too. I do too. And I think that's why I got wrapped into it again.
Yeah.
But like bringing it back to what you asked me earlier, like how
Yes, yes.
I've been able to navigate the last 3 months, and with it being so normalized and literally everywhere, like I don't think that we realize as a society that weed is accessible now. Like,
Right.
yes, there's restrictions, age restrictions, and you need an ID, but you can actually go buy it legally,
Mhm.
and for pretty cheap too,
Yeah.
like cheaper than they'd be selling it out on the
On the
streets, you
street,
know? So,
yeah.
and like the dispensaries are constantly having sales and sending you marketing and email.
Oh
Like
my god, it's the
it,
worst.
it's a business now. It's
Yeah.
a business now,
Right.
and so I don't know. I feel like because it's so normalized, you're right. It is really difficult to
Mhm.
set the boundary and the intention, but tell the people around you and constantly talk about it and be like, no, 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 I am sober. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not smoking. Make it like your personality if you need to.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I did in the last 3 months, and that's what really helped me. And also, like, talking about it on my social media holds me accountable
Mm.
because a lot of the people who follow me on my social media are people that I see on my day to day life. Whether it's at events or castings or whatever the case may be, friends, family,
Right.
they see me. I don't want to be seen as a fraud. None of us do.
Yeah.
So if I'm on something as public as social media saying that I am deciding to stop smoking,
Mhm.
then it kind of enforces it. Like at least for me, it did. I guess all to say it's about like playing a psychological game with
Yeah,
yourself and
brainwashing yourself.
brainwashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, brainwashing yourself into not doing what you don't want to do anymore. And that applies for anything and everything in life. Like any goal you set, brainwash yourself
Yeah.
to accomplish it.
Yeah. I totally relate, especially with the social media and accountability thing, because that's actually how I started out with social media was for accountability purposes. When I was
Hmm.
first getting into the gym, I started my Instagram account to keep me accountable. So I agree, sharing your goals is definitely a great way to set that boundary and have that accountability. I think because I think about with, like, my sober journey with alcohol, I've shared
Hmm.
so much about that, and that's really held me accountable, and like you were saying with friends, I told all my friends, and they were always so supportive, nobody ever pressured me or anything like that. I think the difference, though, for me between weed and alcohol is that I didn't like drinking because I didn't like how it made me feel, but I do
Hmm.
like how weed makes me feel. I
Right,
do
right,
like feeling relaxed, I do like feeling kind of just tapped out, like, unplugged because, like you're
right.
saying, as an entrepreneur, a creator, a young woman even just trying to figure out life, my brain never shuts off. So I think for me that pro And it's funny, I actually wrote a pros and cons list for us
Me
to
too.
share. You did? Oh, cool, cool.
Yeah.
I wrote a pros and cons list, and it's funny because having this visual is so helpful because the cons list is much longer than the pros. But
Yes.
the biggest pro is, like, kinda like we talked about earlier, that it definitely helps with, like, pain, like, when I have a headache or cramps, like, I would 10 times rather have a like, take smoke weed than take, like, Advil or Tylenol. That's just a personal preference. But the other pro is that it definitely helps me to relax, but kinda like you and I were chatting in the DMs, like, is that healthy though? Like, is it healthy for us to use weed as the outlet to help us relax, or should we be focused on doing other things like, I've been tapping into crocheting and reading, like,
Right. Right.
I don't know, is it okay for us to have both? I think yes. I think the answer
I
is
think
yes.
yes. I think it's healthy to have both. And it goes back to what I said earlier about what my friend said, like having your vice but finding that balance.
Mm,
Everything in moderation, right? So
yeah.
I think, maybe like smoking with your friends, but also picking up on a new hobby while you're high, rather than just sitting high and scrolling on your phones and then feeling burnt out at the end of your high is something
Mm,
you could think about. Like since you're getting into crocheting, like smoke and crochet, get
yeah.
high and like create some like sick ass piece.
Right, something like that, I agree. So wait, you did come with the pros and cons list though, so
Yeah.
share some of the
So
things on there.
my I want to start with my cons
Yes, go for it.
because I noticed a lot of cons when I was sober.
Mm,
I and I noticed like how much my life had improved because I was sober and I had like cut down on weed, which is
mm,
crazy to say. And that should be enough for me to realize like stop smoking. But
right.
it's a work in progress, guys. It's it's a
I'm right
journey.
there with you, and I'm
So
sure many of the listeners feel you as well, so
So for the cons, I definitely noticed it slowed me down in my productivity throughout the day,
mm,
as well as just like overall my feeling. I felt too relaxed. I felt too numb, too chilled.
mm,
And so I wasn't able to get anything done. And then I put things off and I procrastinate. I'm already a procrastinator, so weed is just like increasing the procrastination for me and the laziness.
right.
I feel
I
it
agree.
also just it also distracts me. Um, I feel like when I get high, I forget what my goal is behind the things that I'm doing. And so it's harder for me to focus and get shit done. When I was sober, the last 3 months, I got so much done for my business and like just for myself and my life,
Mhm.
productivity wise, because I was able to be intentional and present within every step that I was taking. And I just feel like my brain was functioning at its capacity.
Right,
Um,
because there was nothing there clouding it. There was nothing
exactly.
blocking your creativity and your brain's flow. I think sometimes, like, I got into a little bit of a poor intention because I was telling myself that the weed was making me more creative and it was, like,
hmm
helping
hmm
me be more productive, but I think I was just kind of convincing myself that that was the truth because
Right.
I didn't wanna face the fact that it, in fact, is not true and that I'm less productive, I'm super forgetful, like you were saying, like and
Right.
it's frustrating afterwards too when I'm like, "Damn, like, I shouldn't be forgetting these things or I shouldn't be having these brain fogs at 24 years old."
Right.
So it comes back to, like you were saying, not knowing when it's acceptable.
Exactly. Exactly. I also noticed, dang, I forgot. I was going to say something in response to you, but it's okay. It numbs me.
Mm,
That's a big one. And I had noticed that a while ago that it numbs me because that's why I started using it in the first place because I was struggling with depression and anxiety as well
mm,
as PTSD. Um, but I also noticed after, like within the first year of me using it, yes, it did numb me and it helped me get through those difficult situations. But after that first year, it actually was increasing my feelings of depression and anxiety. And that's why I took a break in November because I have a history of getting really depressed during the wintertime
mhm,
and struggling with keeping my mental health in check.
mhm.
So this year, in an attempt to like work through that or just to like prevent me going into a really bad depressive episode, because I don't know, I feel like I'm at a really good point in my career. I can't get distracted by my mental health.
Yeah.
I have to be proactive rather than reactive. And
Yeah.
in order to be proactive, I took a break from weed. And honestly, I didn't experience. This is the first year in my life where I haven't gone through a hard time in the wintertime or experienced feelings of depressions or thoughts of depression. And I think it's because I was sober during those harsh, winters and the
Right.
winter blues. And because I was present, I was able to have more mental discipline and work
Work
through
through it.
any situation or like mental blockages or negative thoughts that I was
Right.
having.
You weren't just blocking
And
it out.
exactly, I wasn't just numbing it. And on top of that, it allowed me to actually heal. Like,
Mm,
this is the first time in my life where I feel like I'm actually healing. And it's because I'm like mentally there. You know what I mean?
right.
I don't know.
No,
Maybe I sound a little cuckoo crazy, but
no, 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 you don't sound crazy at all. I completely understand. That's how I felt actually back when I first got sober. I don't necessarily feel that way completely now because I am in a much better place as far as, like,
Mhm.
just the things happening in my life. I feel like I feel healed now as well, like you're saying. So I feel like
Yeah,
there's nothing really to numb or to, like, run away from. But when I did
exactly.
first get sober, it was because I was doing that. I was drinking and smoking because my mom had relapsed and my dad was in a really bad state with his temper and just, like, home life was terrible.
Hmm.
So I was drinking and smoking to numb that pain. But then once I got sober and that whole year of being sober, I really spent time with myself. And this is
Right.
what we were talking about in the DMs, right? Of people not wanting to be with themselves, people not wanting to be
Yes.
present. And boy, is that a whole conversation because
Yes.
I think it's I think people are just scared of sitting with themselves and facing the realities of not being happy with themselves, not being happy with their careers or their lives or their relationships. And instead of
Hmm.
actually doing the work, they just numb
Drown it
themselves.
out. Yeah, they drown it out with weed, unfortunately, or other substances.
Yeah. So, what would your advice be to someone who knows that they need to either cut back or just
Hmm.
quit completely, but they're in that position like you were in where it's just around them all the time and it's just been a habit? Like, what was kind of maybe your first step?
Okay. I would definitely say cut it cold turkey. I know that that's
Mm,
like crazy to say because a lot of people say that it's nearly impossible. You're gonna experience like wanting to have it more in your life. But if I hadn't done it cold turkey, then I would have never stopped because in the past I had tried to like cut back on it
mm,
and it never worked. It always failed. It lasted 2 weeks and then I was back at it again. I
mm,
think that because I cut cut it off completely, I was
mhm,
successful in the 3 months of my sobriety. There were times within those 3 months, I want to say maybe two times at most, maybe even four. I don't know, but that I did smoke. And but those were moments where it was more social and I was at
mm,
a point in my sobriety where I was able to stop and ask myself, do I want to do this? Why am I doing it? And is it going to cause me more harm than it is going to help me?
mm.
And I was at a point in my sobriety where I was okay, like I was having fun with my friends. I wanted to connect with them and I didn't feel like I had anything weighing on my chest that I hadn't dealt with that I was trying to numb. And I think
Right.
that's a big one. So, yeah, that's my advice.
I love it. I think I needed to hear that. I agree. I think cutting cold turkey is the best way. That's what worked for me the first time around. And now I think I want to be able to find a balance. Like I think
Mhm.
okay, so when at least for me, like when I like something, not even just like a substance, but like when I enjoy doing something that I know maybe not like what am I trying to say here? Like food, for example, okay? My relationship
Mhm.
with food, right? When I first started dieting and working out or whatever, and I cut out all the foods I love, it just made me want them more. And
Mm.
that's how and so now, right, my relationship with food is a lot different because I know that. I know that if I cut out all of the quote unquote unhealthy foods, it's just going to make me want them more and I'm going to binge them. So I
Mm.
have found a balance where, okay, I know that my three meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, are going to be nutrient based and full of good things, but I'm also going to have some cookies later on because I like cookies. And
Yes, yes.
it doesn't make me like crave it all the time because I know it's a part of my lifestyle. So I feel like for smoking, I am wanting this year to find a way to incorporate it in my lifestyle that
Yeah.
is more intentional, like we're saying, right? Where I can use it for the good purposes to relax or to feel better, or if I'm on a vacation and I have
Mhm.
nothing to, I have no other priorities and I can just chill out, then I want that. But I think I'm just kind of right now in this in between of finding that balance and not letting the temptations take control. Because, like I said, it is
Right.
definitely with the pen for sure. It's a fixation. It's an
Mhm.
oral fixation. You
Me
mentioned
too. Me
earlier
too.
you have that. Have you found any ways to like help with that oral fixation or?
I snack
Mm,
like when I want to smoke and I'm already high, or I just can't get high at the moment because I'm doing something that needs my full attention. I chew on crunchy things. So celery, carrots, apples, things like that. And I use Nutella because I like something sweet.
ooh, okay.
So yeah, that honestly that's what I've been doing, and I didn't even realize that I was doing it for that until you mentioned it right now. But give it a try. Maybe it'll help. But I wanted to say something on based off of what you said earlier.
Mhm,
Um, just like a little like advice for you and for everyone listening.
mhm,
If you're already thinking about rethinking or reestablishing your relationship and your boundaries with weed, like congratulations, that's the first step, and
mhm,
you're halfway there. Like give yourself grace
mhm,
because you've already come into the intentionality of like realizing, okay, this is kind of harming me, but it's fun. So how can I make it healthy for me?
I love that perspective. Thank you for saying that because
You're
I
welcome.
definitely think I should give myself more grace in this area. I think that anybody should, especially like you're saying, because it's become so normal and so acceptable
Yes.
and so accessible. Like, I mean, we can, we're still human, right? We can have discipline
Yeah.
and we can have boundaries, but at the end of the day, we are still human and sometimes we do things and have these hiccups and that's okay. Like I'm sure for you in your journey, over those 3 months when you were smoking, you were like, "You know what? It was just this one moment. It's not going to make or, it's not going to break me. Let me
Right.
just keep going."
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Have a little fun.
Yes, life is not all that serious. I mean,
Exactly.
I think, like, my dad, he'll say, like, "Oh, it's not good, the smoke's not good for your lungs," and, like,
And I
valid,
get
right?
that. I
Totally
get it.
valid. But an edible just
Man,
doesn't hit as hard for me, okay? I don't know about you, but
I get that. I get that. I actually, speaking of that, I've been thinking of like creating my own edibles and like my own oils. And maybe that way it'll be a little more like of a oomph and a
yeah,
hit for myself because I'll be in control of it.
yeah,
Because your dad is so right. That
mhm,
is also one of the cons that I wrote, that
me
it's
too.
like unhealthy. In
Right,
all reality, it is unhealthy in so many ways to
right,
your body, to your lungs, and also mentally and physically, because like I said, it slows you down and it numbs you. It
right,
makes you be unpresent and disconnected.
right,
But finding other ways to do it that will be healthier can
right.
like make up for that.
Right. And we're not perfect. Like you said, right? Like life's not that serious. We can still have our fun. It's just all about
Yeah.
moderation and I think just being real with yourself, right? Like that's
Hmm.
kind of the chapter of my life that I went through all of last year was like really being real with myself and kind of looking at myself from outside of the jar. So there's a guy that I listen to a podcast, The Mindset Mentor. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yes.
Rob Dial. He says, when you're in the jar, you can't read the label. And I fucking love that, right?
Mm.
And for me, that has just symbolized like when you're so in your own head, you can't really see what's going on. Like you have to kind of have this like out of body experience and look at yourself
Hmm.
from this outside perspective. Look at yourself as like a friend coming to you for advice and being straight up with her because like if you got a bestie and she comes to you saying, "Girl, I think I should quit weed, but I don't know," like,
Yeah.
and she gives you all these cons, you're not gonna sit there and be like, "Well, girl, it's so much fun." Like, you should just keep like, if she's telling you, like, "Hey, I know I have this issue," you're gonna be like, "All right, girl, like, how can I help you?" Right? Like, be that
Like get it
friend for
under control, you
yourself.
know?
Yeah, and I just think, like, being that friend for yourself, not just in this topic, but, like, any area of life, like, any goal that you have
Yeah.
for yourself for this year, be real with yourself, and if it's on your mind, it's on your mind for a reason. Like,
Yes.
pursue that thought, pursue that intention, and make it happen for yourself. Yeah, I guess that's
That's a big one. I
mm,
really like that last part you said about if it's on your mind, then
it's
it
there
means
for a reason.
something.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Don't avoid it, don't
that's
run away
deep.
from it, like, I feel like just like we're saying about smoking, it's like you have these thoughts of, "Oh, I should quit," and then you're like, "Ah, I'm just gonna get high and forget I even thought of that." But then the cycle just keeps
Yeah,
repeating, and it's honestly, it's
exactly.
exhausting, right?
It is.
Like,
It
any
is.
repeating cycle is
It
exhausting.
is exhausting. But I feel like having stopped helped me like do the healing so now I can like actually enjoy it, you know?
Right.
So like
Right. You can enter
think
this
of
new like you said, you
yeah.
can enter this new chapter of doing it more intentionally because you took that time
Yes,
off, you healed, now you know, "Okay, I know what it did wrong for me, but I know the good it can do for me,
right.
let me find that balance." Yeah.
Find the balance. I think that's like the topic of
That's the
today's
topic, right?
conversation.
Finding the
Like
balance.
the lesson would be
The
find the
lesson.
balance.
Absolutely,
That's what's
I agree.
healthy.
So what are your as we wrap up here, what are
Mhm.
your intentions in the new year, with smoking and the relationship you have with weed?
Okay, so relationship wise, use it more as see weed more as a friend versus a crutch.
Mm,
And I say that because I'm learning to set boundaries with friends, or in the last year, I learned how to set boundaries with friends. So I feel like having that connection with weed is going to allow me to set boundaries with it, but also have fun with it, right?
great. Mhm.
Because with your friends, you want to set healthy boundaries, but you still want to hang out with them
Fun.
once in a while. Maybe not every day, but once in a while,
Mm.
you
I
know?
love that.
With yeah.
That's a good connection. That's really good.
I'm telling you, it's all about brainwashing your brain.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that's one of the intentions. And to go a little deeper into that, maybe just like instead of smoking every single day, I was never a person who smoked a lot throughout the
Mhm.
day, but I did smoke every single day,
Right.
whether it was one or two joints a day, which is like I think a good balance because there are
Mhm.
people who be smoking like day in and day out and like
Crazy. My ex,
they
the one that I was
eat,
telling you
breathe
about,
shit.
it was 2 in the morning before he even got out of bed. It was 2 after he got out of
Mm-mm.
bed. It was madness. It was madness.
Like 7, 8, not my leg dying.
Oh, that's
It's
okay.
okay.
It happens.
Like not 7 a.m. smoking before you've even had breakfast or like drink a glass of water. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
guys, we need to have standards for ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
We need to take care of ourselves in some capacity.
Right, right. And that's why I'm saying in moderation. So maybe in moderation for you may mean smoking once a day.
Right.
Whereas for me, it may mean smoking 2 to 3 times a week or
Right.
limiting myself to only smoking on the weekends,
Right. Or,
That's
like,
what I
only
used
with
to do.
friends or something. Yeah.
Yeah, when I actually first started, when I met my boyfriend and I first got introduced to it, I was still in college. So I did have that boundary with myself
Mm.
where I would only smoke on the weekends because during the week I was going after my education and I need to stay focused. And maybe I should pick that up again because, the week is the work week and the weekends are for me to chill and relax and be present with my boyfriend. So maybe that's where I find my balance. I think
Mm.
that's going to be the intention I set.
Good. I love it. I've also been considering that because that's what I started doing when I first started
Hmm.
up after I got sober, around like last year. It was only on the weekends, not even every weekend, and it was like just
Yeah,
very in moderation, but it like I said just quickly became an everyday thing. So yeah, I think I can agree with you there with the intentions and treating it as a friend, not seeing it so much as this thing that like I have to avoid because then it makes me want it more. Seeing it
right,
for the medicine that it actually is and for the positive ways that it can help me, but also being honest with myself and not lying to myself that it makes me more productive when I very
right,
clearly know it doesn't.
right.
So I think this is great. I think we have some really good intentions for the new year. We're gonna hold each other accountable now too, right? Like,
Yes,
I'm gonna be
yes. No,
thinking
we
about this
are.
conversation every time I have, like, the urge. I'm gonna be like, "Nah, I
Yes.
can't do it."
Eat an apple.
Eat an apple, yeah. I love it, I love it. Well, anything else that you have, any final words or anything that you wanna share before we end today's episode?
I guess just to like conclude it all and put it all together in the end, highlighting again that it's just really all about finding the balance and implementing the boundaries that you need to be able to have a good relationship with weed or whatever substance you may use. Reminder to not use it as a form of escapism or to numb yourself and rather use it in moderation with good reason. So, with that being said, do the work and heal so you can have a good relationship with weed.
Yes, love it. Mic drop. That's how we're gonna end this episode today. Elisa, where can the girlies find you and all of your fire content that you've been sharing?
Thank you. You guys can find me on Instagram at Eliza, Eliza, period, Vinas, Vinas, and on TikTok at Elisa Vinas.
Yes,
Yeah.
and of course, as always, I will put her Instagram in the description. She's got a bunch of other accounts too that I think you have, like, linked in that one bio, right? Like, your
Yes.
style page and all that. Awesome. So,
Yes.
definitely
Yes.
check
Yes.
her out. She is multifaceted, like she mentioned earlier, and does an incredible job in all the work that she does. So, yeah,
Thank
check her
you.
out. Thank you so much for coming on today and having this conversation. I think it's really important to have, especially now that weed is so accessible in the way that it is, and that stigma has kind of gone away, but yeah, I think there are a lot of people who struggle with it still, so hopefully we brought some light to it and they can go into the new year with new intentions as well, right?
Yes.
Awesome,
Thank you,
awesome.
Michaela.
Of course, thank you, and thank you all for tuning in. If you can show this episode some love by sharing it, liking, comment, subscribe, any of those things, I always appreciate it, and it helps the show grow to reach more people, of course, which is even more important. So thank you guys so much. I love you, and I will see you on Friday for another solo episode of A Girl's Guide to. Bye!